All right, so we're going deep on this Finnish artist, Ollipekka Kangas.
Oh, yeah.
And wow, you really weren't kidding around with this material, huh?
Yeah, it's quite a lot.
I mean, we've got a CV, his website, artist statements, even like a whole exhibition proposal.
It's amazing.
I kind of feel like a detective piecing together clues here.
It's like we get to see him from all these different angles.
Right?
It's not just like the polished resume. It's like we get glimpses into like his creative process. Maybe even his personality a bit.
Absolutely. So by the time we're done with this, you're going to have a really good grasp on like his whole journey as an artist,
Yeah.
the techniques that make his work so unique, and the themes that he just keeps coming back to over and over.
Uh-huh.
And let me tell you, I've skimmed the material already. There are some surprises in here.
Really?
Oh, yeah. Long exposure photography, like from a moving car, paintings with rust worked into them.
Wow.
This is not your average art class.
Okay, color me intrigued.
Right.
Should we start with the CV then?
Let's do it, yeah.
Get a sense of the basics.
CV Update 2024.pdf tells us Ollipekka Kangas, born in 1965 in Riihimäki, Finland, has a Master of Arts degree, even a teaching qualification.
Oh, wow.
So no surprise then that he's currently teaching art at the University of Turku. But hold on, because here's where things get interesting.
Okay.
His exhibition history.
Oh, yeah. Decades of activity.
Decades.
In the Finnish art world, that's for sure. Solo shows, group exhibitions.
Wow.
Earliest ones going back to like the 90s.
That's impressive.
And he's not just staying in one place, either Helsinki, Tampere, Turku.
Yeah, he gets around.
This is a well-traveled artist.
And even the titles of these exhibitions, right? They're not just generic labels.
Yeah.
Ephemeral Horizons feels like blue.
You get a sense of like the concepts he's working with, right?
Exactly. And then there's Rakkaudesta Lajeen. Did you catch that one?
For the love of the sport, yeah.
What?
That's not your usual art exhibit title.
It makes you wonder what the connection is.
I know, right? Like sport and visual art.
Yeah, maybe he's drawn to the movement or the human form, you know, in action. Or maybe it's something else entirely.
Yeah, we'll have to keep an eye out for that.
Right, as we go through this stuff, the CV also mentions memberships in art associations like the Turku Artists Association, RTE really.
So he's not just a lone wolf. He's part of a community.
Yeah.
Part of a larger network of artists there.
Okay, so we've got his background, his experience, but what about the art itself?
Right. What does it actually look like?
Well, thankfully, we've got some artist statements to give us a little peek inside his head.
Okay, good.
This one from pftayapaja.pdf is a good place to start. I think he says, "Art is my fatherland and mother tongue."
Wow. Okay. That's powerful.
Right.
It's not just a job. You know, it's not just self-expression. It's like something much deeper than that.
Yeah, it's core to his being.
Yeah.
And then he goes on to call himself an eternal experimenter, a hunter-gatherer on the edge of the art field.
So you get the feeling this guy's not afraid to break the mold.
At all? No, not at all.
And that totally comes through in the variety of like techniques and materials he uses.
Oh, yeah.
Like abstract expressionism.
Yeah.
That seems to be his painting home base.
Yeah.
You know, spontaneous, focus on feeling lots of color, light texture.
Right. But then there's this slow shutter photography, and that's like a whole other thing.
Yeah, that's where it gets really interesting.
This is where the photography gets seriously cool, long exposures, like 6 to 12 seconds.
Wow.
All taken from a moving car. Imagine trying to do that.
I can't even imagine the streaks of light.
Oh, wow.
It's like time and motion all warped into these crazy images.
And get this, he even uses special software to make them even more painterly.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And speaking of time, there's this exhibition proposal called In Time.
Okay, that's a title that grabs you right away.
It does, right?
You're like, what does that mean?
And he takes this idea of capturing these fleeting moments and just ramps it up with a video installation, playing with light trails, the changing seasons, like super evocative stuff. But wait, there's more. He uses all these unexpected materials in his artwork, rust iron powder, etching, even a heat gun.
What a heat gun.
A heat gun.
Wow.
It's not just paint and brushes with this guy.
No kidding.
And when he describes his painting surface as destructive, that really makes me curious.
Destructive.
Yeah, is it the process?
Yeah.
The materials themselves?
Interesting.
There's this tension there, this push and pull between making and breaking down.
I see that, yeah.
And then he talks about this contrast, the figures in his paintings. At first glance, they're, kind of sympathetic.
Okay.
But the way he makes them is harsh.
Interesting.
It's like there's this hidden layer of something a bit darker, more complex.
A little unsettling, maybe?
Yeah, going on beneath the surface.
Absolutely. Like he's inviting you to look closer.
Yes.
To kind of figure out what's going on beyond those first impressions.
Exactly. And get this, on top of all that, he's playing around with digital art, AI art, talking about going from lerp to the metaverse.
That's like it's no big deal.
Yeah, like it's just another Tuesday.
He's really embracing technology, it seems.
He's clearly not afraid of new tech.
It shows how adaptable he is.
Yeah.
Like, he's not stuck in one way of doing things.
Yeah.
That's pretty impressive, especially in the art world, you know?
Oh, absolutely.
Which can be pretty traditional sometimes.
Okay, so remember that line from his artist statement, I create my skin anew even though I don't have to?
Oh, yeah. That was a good one.
What do you make of that?
It makes me think about art as this constant shedding and renewal, you know?
Uh-huh.
Like he's not content to just settle into one style or one way of seeing things.
Yeah, it's like he's constantly evolving, pushing himself creatively.
Yeah, and do you remember how he talks about the sea?
Oh, yeah. Art is here by the sea, in the lapping between the boat and the pier.
It's so visual.
Right.
So evocative, the sea, this vast, ever-changing force.
Right.
And art is like this meeting point.
Yes.
This liminal space where things are in flux, where new meanings are born.
And remember how blue keeps popping up?
Oh, yeah. Not just the Feels Like Blue exhibition, but like throughout his work.
Right, and he's pretty explicit about it in one of his statements, blue as peace and tranquility.
Right. So is he trying to achieve those things through his art, or is he trying to evoke them in the viewer?
Maybe both. It's definitely a thread worth pulling on.
Absolutely.
This connection to blue, what it signifies for him, how it might be a way to tap into something deeper.
Yeah.
Something beyond the everyday.
Totally agree. It's those little details that can unlock a whole new level of understanding about an artist's vision.
Okay, so we've covered a ton here.
We have.
Background artistic philosophy. We even got into some specific techniques and themes he's exploring.
Yeah.
But we've still got a whole lot more to unpack, right?
Absolutely. We've only just scratched the surface of Ollipekka Kangas.
Yeah.
There are still some unanswered questions.
Oh, yeah.
Some fascinating threads to pull on.
Like, what's up with this sport connection?
Right.
We have to figure that out.
For one thing. And what about the evolution of his techniques?
Yeah.
How has his artistic journey led him to where he is today?
Excellent point. There's a whole chapter of his story we're missing.
I think so.
You know what? I think I know where to find it.
Okay.
Stay tuned for part 2 of this deep dive because we're just getting started.
I'm excited. You know, going back to his techniques, that slow shutter photography is really something else.
Yeah, it's like he's bending time with this camera.
I know, it's amazing.
We talked about those long exposures, 6 to 12 seconds. But think about the skill that takes.
Oh, yeah.
Especially from a moving car.
It's got to be like this constant dance between like anticipating the shot, understanding how light and movement will interact.
Yes.
And having the reflexes to capture that fleeting moment.
And then on top of that, he's using this specialized software to further manipulate those images, pushing them even further into this like painterly realm.
It's wild.
There's a real blurring of the lines between photography and painting.
Yeah, I find that so fascinating.
Totally. Speaking of blurring lines, there's another technique. He mentions diludo. Now, this is on the painting side of things.
Okay.
And he describes it as painting intuitively diluting in a Tachis style. Have you heard of Tachism?
I have, yeah. It's all about speed and gesture, you know, letting the subconscious guide the brush strokes.
Yeah.
Almost like a form of automatic writing, but with paint.
Right. So with diludo, it sounds like he's incorporating that spontaneous energy, but then using dilution to create these like watery, layered effects.
Interesting.
It's such a cool contrast to the meticulous planning and control involved in his slow shutter photography.
Yeah, you've got these two opposite ends of the creative spectrum.
Totally.
The calculated and the spontaneous.
And it makes me think back to that quote we keep coming back to.
Which one?
I create my skin anew even though I don't have to.
Oh, yeah.
It's like each technique, each material is another layer of skin he's shedding, revealing something new beneath.
That's a beautiful way to put it.
And maybe he's encouraging us to do the same, you know.
Oh, yeah.
To not be afraid to shed our own skins.
To embrace change.
Right, to embrace change and growth.
Absolutely.
Deep stuff. And it ties back to that blog post title, One Small Moment of Mindfulness. Do you think he's finding those moments of mindfulness through this process of creative shedding and renewal?
I think so. Yeah, it's like by constantly challenging himself, trying new things, he's staying present, engaged, and open to the world around him.
Yeah.
And those moments of mindfulness, those glimpses of clarity and peace,
right.
Maybe they're woven into the very fabric of his artwork.
Wow, I love that. And remember how we talked about blue that recurring motif in his work.
Oh, yeah, he describes it as representing peace,
Yeah.
Zen tranquility.
Right. Maybe that's what he's trying to capture in those fleeting moments, that sense of stillness and clarity, that connection to something deeper within himself and within the world around him.
It's possible.
So we've got this incredible artist pushing boundaries with his techniques, exploring these profound themes of time change and self-discovery, but we still haven't cracked the code on that sport connection.
I know it's been bugging me, too. It's not like a subtle thing either. Rakadestalagine, 30V, Painsani.
For the love of the sport, 30 years against the walls.
Those are fighting words.
They are. Okay, let's go back to his artist statement, see if there are any clues we missed.
Okay.
Aha found it in the statement about his process. He talks about how he finds inspiration in the rhythm of repetition, the struggle for mastery, the physicality of pushing against limits. Sound familiar?
Hold on. Rhythm struggle, pushing limits, that totally connects to the world of sport.
I know, right?
It's not just about the physical act. It's about the mental and emotional demands.
Yes.
The dedication, the pursuit of excellence.
It's like he's drawing a parallel between the dedication and discipline it takes to excel in sport and the dedication it takes to create meaningful art.
Right, and 30 years against the walls takes on a whole new meaning now, doesn't it?
It's like he's been in this constant battle, this pushing against his own boundaries, not just for 30 years, but maybe his whole life.
Wow.
Maybe that's the sport he's referring to.
Yeah.
The art of pushing himself creatively, never settling, always striving for something more.
I love that interpretation.
It adds another layer to the internal experimenter label, right?
It does.
He's not just experimenting with techniques and materials, but with his own limits, his own capacity for growth.
And maybe that's what makes his work so compelling.
Yeah.
That underlying tension between control and surrender.
Right.
That constant push and pull between his inner world and the world around him.
Okay, we're getting somewhere. We've got the techniques, the themes, this fascinating connection to the world of sport, but there's still one piece of the puzzle missing, right?
Yeah.
How does this guy actually make a living? As an artist, we know he teaches, but what about selling his work?
You're right. That's a huge part of the equation we haven't explored yet. And I'm also curious about how his art has evolved over time.
Yeah.
We've touched on his early exhibitions and his more recent forays into digital art and AI.
Right.
But what about the in-between years?
Yeah.
What were those pivotal moments that shaped his artistic journey?
Excellent point. There's a whole chapter of his story we're missing. And you know what? I think I know where to find it. Remember how we were talking about Ollipekka Kangas actually making a living as an artist?
Yeah.
Well, I took another look at his website, Ollipekka Kangas Art, and there's this whole section called BUI Art.
Oh, so he's not just exhibiting his work, he's actively selling it too.
He is, which means he's not just creating art for himself or the elite art world.
Right, for anybody who wants it.
But for anyone who connects with his style.
Which makes you wonder, who is his audience?
Yeah.
What kind of person is drawn to those bold colors, the abstract forms, the unconventional materials?
Right.
Are we talking like serious art collectors or everyday folks who just want something, unique for their living room?
I'm super curious about that too. Maybe there's a way to get a glimpse into that through website analytics, but that's probably a deep dive for another day.
Yeah.
What I did find, though, is this timeline he put together on his website,
Okay.
highlighting key moments in his artistic journey.
Interesting.
It's like a behind-the-scenes look at how his style has evolved over time.
That's amazing. We were just talking about those missing chapters.
I know, right?
The in-between years. So what kind of stuff does he highlight?
Okay, so it starts with his early exhibitions in the 90s, which focus pretty heavily on abstract painting, very much in that spontaneous, intuitive style we talked about.
Uh-huh.
Then in the early 2000s, there's this shift towards incorporating found objects and mixed media into his work.
Oh, wow.
Think pieces of driftwood, rusty metal things he'd find along the Finnish coastline.
So that fascination with unconventional materials goes way back.
It does.
It makes me wonder if those early explorations with found objects planted the seeds for his later use of rust and iron powder.
Totally. It's like each stage of his journey is building upon the last.
Yeah.
And then in the mid-2000s, bam, he starts experimenting with photography.
Okay.
First with traditional landscapes, then gradually moving towards those long exposure, slow shutter shots from a moving car.
So it wasn't like a sudden departure.
Yeah.
It was a gradual evolution from his earlier work.
Exactly. And it's around this time that he starts incorporating digital manipulation into his photography.
Okay.
Blurring the lines between the real and the digitally created.
So the LERP to the metaverse journey began way before the actual metaverse was even a thing.
He was ahead of the curve. And then in the 2010s, he takes another leap. He starts incorporating those slow shutter images into his paintings,
Oh,
creating these hybrid works that blend photography, painting, and digital manipulation.
that's so
It's
cool.
like he's constantly pushing the boundaries of what we even consider painting or photography.
Yeah, it's almost as if those traditional labels don't even apply anymore.
I know, right? It's like he's creating his own category of art altogether.
That's amazing.
And then in the last few years, he's added AI art to the mix, exploring the possibilities of algorithms and machine learning as creative tools.
Wow. Which brings us full circle
It does.
back to that idea of him as an eternal experimenter.
Always seeking out new ways to express himself and engage with the world.
Yeah.
It's pretty incredible, right? This guy's been on a nonstop creative journey for over 3 decades, and he shows no signs of slowing down.
It makes you wonder what he'll come up with next.
I know, right? What new boundaries will he push?
What new mediums will he explore?
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive. We've gone from his early days as an abstract painter to his current explorations with AI art. We've uncovered his unique techniques, his fascination with unconventional materials, his deep connection to the natural world, even his personal connection to the world of sport.
It's been quite a journey. We've seen the meticulous planner, the spontaneous experimenter, the nature lover, the teacher, the entrepreneur. It's like we've gotten to know Ollipekka Kangas not just as an artist, but as a human being.
Yeah, absolutely. And remember that powerful statement he made early on, art is my fatherland and mother tongue.
Oh, yeah?
What do you think he meant by that after everything we've learned?
I think it goes beyond just saying art is important to him. It's like saying art is his home. It's his way of being in the world. It's how he understands himself and communicates with others.
It's as essential to him as breathing.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a beautiful way to think about it, and it makes me wonder, what is your fatherland and mother tongue? What's that thing that makes you feel at home in the world that allows you to express yourself fully and connect with others on a deeper level?
That's a question worth pondering for sure.
It is, and if you're as intrigued by Ollipekka Kangas as we are, I encourage you to check out his website or search for his exhibitions online. There's a whole world of beauty and wonder waiting to be discovered in his art.
We've only scratched the surface.
We have, and we hope this deep dive has sparked your curiosity to learn more. Until next time, happy exploring a